Welcome back to the Sage Intacct Construction Payroll Configuration series of videos. At this point, you've been through a ton of videos and you've reached the last big configuration setup, which is getting those employees configured and set up so that you can start testing and running your payroll. So basically, again, you want to be at entity level by the time you get into setting up projects and employees in payroll. So I'll take a step back, and of course, when you're setting up a employee, they're going to need to be initially set up in the Intacct time and expense area first. So a lot of times during your deployment, we're importing those in for you at the initial master file stage. So if you go into top level and you go to time or expense, it's the same screen. I usually go into time. Under employees here, you'll see a list of your employees. In this screen is going to be just some of the static information for the employee, not payroll specific. So for example, this is where you're going to come in and set up the employee name, the employee ID, the address of the employee. So when you're setting up this contact name, this is where you actually put in the mailing address for the employee, and then any other information like email addresses and stuff like that. So that will need to be done initially before you can take it any further in configuration. One of the only other things that is needed inside this screen for configuration is basically their payment information. So for example, this employee under reimbursement information, I'm going to hit edit here so we can see these fields, is what do they get? Do they get a physical check for payroll? Or do they get a direct deposit, which is going to be under the payment method of ACH or bank file? If it's ACH or bank file, then down below, you need to check off enable ACH payments, or in some cases, enable bank file payments. You'll only see bank file payments if we determine during your deployment reviews and your checklist, your check-ins, that your bank needs a different file format other than ACH. Then we have a lot more options under these bank files and we load them up. So you might not even see bank files initially, it just might be ACH. So go ahead and set it up through the ACH way. And down here, you're going to put in your bank routing and account number and all that good stuff. At the time of this video, there is only one direct deposit account allowed per employee for payroll. So as you can see here, there's only a spot for one bank account information. That's the one that's going to need to get filled out here. So really, the initial employee under time employees is really going to need name, address. You don't even need social security number here because you'll see over in the payroll secured area where we have a spot for social security numbers. One thing that you may want and can be critical is if you are using the department dimension, this is where you're going to assign the department for the employee when they're not working on a project. So if you have office employees or if you have employees that sometimes work in the shop, you'd want to put their department as the non-project or the field department here. So that if they're working on an overhead job with no department, this is where it's going to look to grab the department next. Okay. And then of course, location, which is going to be equal to the entity. If you have multiple payroll for multiple entities, this is where you're going to say this employee belongs to company A, company B, that type of thing. Okay. So that's all going to be under the time and expense module. And they did also add another payroll tab here that you can click on it and it'll take you into the payroll setup area in that module. Now, sometimes I don't like doing it there because if I'm at top level, I don't want to be at top level when I'm setting up the payroll. So I usually just come over to your entity level. Once that employee's set up in the time and expense, then come over to payroll, set up employees, and go right into there. And then you should see your employee name on the list here. If you don't see your employee name on the list, make sure you don't have them inactive. So you can hit this little button here. And if you don't see them on this list, that probably means you never set them up in time and expense. Okay. Once they're set up in time and expense, you'll see them on the list here. You won't see anything filled out for pay group and trade. And that's a good check to see if there's anybody who we need to set up. And you can see here, Josh Allen is not set up here yet for pay groups and trades. So let's go ahead. While we're in here, let's do Josh. So to set up the employee, you'll come in and click on the name. And again, I'm at entity level. And you're going to have a series of tabs here to fill out. You have to save these tabs before you move on to the next tab. Everything I'm showing you here can also be imported. So at first, we usually recommend you set up a few employees from scratch manually so you learn how to do it. Because when you get that one new employee, you'll just do it manually. But then we can provide you with some templates and help you import in a lot of the initial setup to save you some time and energy, especially if you have a large set of employees that you're running payroll for. So under the Details tab, I'm going to click Add Effective Date. This effective date is typically going to be your hire date. Okay. Worst case, it's going to be the beginning of the year, but typically it's going to be your hire date. So let's say he was hired on January 1st, 2022. You'll fill that out. And some of these fields are required, so you'll have an asterisk here. Entity. This is why we needed to make sure that entity was set up ahead of time in payroll. We only have one, but maybe you're running two companies' payrolls. You might have to pick the right entity here. And what pay group? So again, depending on pay groups, maybe you have some that are biweekly, some that are weekly. What is this employee? He's a weekly payroll employee. So we'll select that. Some of the other things that are critical is you want to make sure everybody has this default trade and level filled out. They might not have union if you're not union, but everybody should have a default trade, even if they're office or admin. Office, office, office. Okay, fill them out. Let's say Josh is going to be a mechanical. He's going to be under the mechanical trade, and he is a senior general foreman. So you can fill that out there. PTO. If you have those PTO schedules created that we did in some prior videos, under here, this is where you're telling which schedule does this employee participate in. And let's say they're in the field PTO calculations. And then this right here is saying, what is the effective date? What is their anniversary date for the vacation? So typically that's going to be your hire date as well. One thing to consider here is if your PTO is off of anniversary date and not calendar year. Right now, as of this date of this video, the only way you can do it is off a calendar year. So it's really only looking at these 4 digits, and it's doing accruals based on 1/1/2022, even though I said 1/1 here. It's not looking at this. So if this was 4/1, it wouldn't do that flip for years of service as 4/1. It would do it as of 1/1. Now, that is supposed to be in a future enhancement. So hopefully by the time that you see this video, you do have that option. But right now you don't. You can check on this little information here to make sure. And they can have multiple. So if you are tracking PTO and vacation and sick and separate date, you can have as many of these as you want. You can click all of them here. Let's say field. Tax classification, sometimes a little confusing because it sounds like it's an actual tax, when in reality, this is really mainly used for workers' comp codes. So this is a common way to pre-fill a code. So if you are pre-filling codes by employee, or you want it to look here if they're not working on a certain cost code, you can hit Add Tax Classification. I would recommend not using the individual workers' comp IDs in case you have multiple states. You'd have to have 3 lines here for each state. You can use the tax category because the category should be the same on all 3. So you're basically saying whenever the tax is a workers' comp category, this employee should be 8810 for that classification code. And that's how it'll get it from. And we'll see some other areas in the next video for the cost code overrides where you can do it by cost code. At this point, that's the critical fields that need to be set up on the Details tab for testing. You can also continue on and fill out some of these reporting fields here. If you're going to report on full-time, seasonal, race, EEO reports can be generated. So you can fill this information out if you have it available, but it's not required. And then here is where the Social Security number really resides from if we're going to, when we're doing W-2s and things like that through Atrix. So you do want to make sure you have Social Security number in there. Just fill one out and save that. And that can be imported too. So I'll just go ahead and hit save. I think it already did. Yep, saved it for me here. And you'll know because the save button is grayed out. So I can move to the next tab. Now I can move to the compensation tab. Everybody needs an effective date. Again, this can be the hire date, but eventually this is going to be the history of their pay increases. So you can use the hire date, or you can just do it as simply as like January 1 to start. So everyone's going to have an effective date. You only need to fill out the annual salary for employees that you're going to calculate you're going to calculate the auto salary on. So these are employees that are going to get an auto salary. We don't want to put hours in for them. We just wanted to add their salary each time we process payroll. So if you were doing that, and if Josh was an auto salary employee, you would put in their annual salary. And if you are going to do annual salary, you absolutely need a journal entry mapping there, because if you're doing auto salary, you're not entering time to a job. So this is the only place it knows to get the general ledger. So you'll come into here and say, it's probably going to be like an auto salary mapping or an admin mapping in this case, and you would do that. If this is a field guy or someone who's getting hourly pay, you leave both these fields blank. Do not fill that out. It's not a reporting field. If they're hourly, you'll see down here their default trade and level is going to pre-fill that we just did over in the first tab. And then you have the ability to say, for regular, their default rate of pay is $22 an hour. I'm going to give them 25. Okay. And at that point, you can hit save. Now, if there is certified tables involved or union tables, depending on this rate, it may or may not use this rate. It may use the certified table, or it may use this rate because this rate is the higher rate. So there's a hierarchy into how it grabs it from it. The other scenario is, and I want to mention it in case it comes up, well, sometimes Josh is mechanical senior foreman, but other times he's a journeyman. Okay, that may or may not ever happen. But if it does, you need to make sure you have the combo in there. So you need to actually add another combo here and says, sometimes he's mechanical and a journeyman. And then here you would do the same rate of pay, right? 25, boom. Needs to be listed or it won't be able to find this combo. All right. So just be aware of that. This can all be imported too. And then basically click save. Now, just to show you why we're here, if let's say on March 1st, or let's say August, Josh got a pay raise. So you could then come into here and you can say duplicate. And you can say as of 8/1, his rate of pay is going up to $28. Okay, and then save. And what's nice about that is, number one, you can track the history of the rates. Number two, the system's automatically going to give him the new rate when he hits that work date. So you can do this ahead of time. And basically, if this is middle of the week, it'll give him the old rate the first half and the new rate the second half. So you can do that as much as you need to do. Next tab, pay modifiers. This is where you're going to link all of the automatic deductions, fringes, other pays that the employee gets. Now, if they are a union, or if they are getting like certified and it's the certified cash fringe, those you do not want to set them up here. It will confuse the system. If they're in a table, you don't need to set them up here. The table is going to add them to the employee automatically. If you set them up here and in the table, you're going to get an error message that says, hey, you got this in two places. I don't know which one to use. Okay. So you only want to set up things here that are automatic and that aren't in the certified and the union setups. A good example of this is bonus. You may give an employee a bonus, but it's not going to be regular. So you're going to have the ability to give them a bonus on the fly during the time entry and processing of the check without having it in their employee records. You don't need to link bonus here. You'll see on the left, it'll show you all of the pay modifiers you've been setting up to date. And then it'll show which ones are not assigned and which ones are assigned. So then you'll come into here and say, all right, well, Josh is going to participate in the 401k and Roth. So you click on it. Watch your effective date. This should pre-fill to 1/1. And then you're going to fill out the details. So is it a flat amount? Is it a percent? Is it pre-tax, after-tax, or is it both? Maybe they're doing 4 pre-tax and 2 Roth after-tax. You can do both. For a 401k, you can also, if they are above the ages of 50 or 60, you can do the super catch-up for these ages too. So you can select all that. And then once I fill it out, I say save and assign. Now you'll notice he has 1 pay modifier assigned. And you keep going. So maybe he's going to do the dental plan. Now the dental plan, we already had $16 set up, and that's true for everybody. So I don't need to fill anything out. I just need to click it and assign. And then maybe he participates in life insurance, and the company pays healthcare. I don't know if I have, medical. So the company pays medical. So it's also going to be the ER the employer pays. And then is $115 a week. And so you just say assign. Okay, you may have some burden calculations. Maybe they get a cell phone allowance or something like that. I don't know if I have one here. Let's see. Hazard duty. So maybe they get, an extra $1.60 per paycheck. So you can automatically assign that as well. Okay. So you're going to go through here and assign all those pay modifiers that an employee might get. And then we'll test that when we get into the testing phase. And this can all be imported as well. Next 3 tabs are really going to be taxes and filing statuses. So for the resident taxes, you're going to add an effective date here too. Typically, you don't have to, this can just be 1/1. You can do the higher date if you want to as well, or if they move or something like that. And you want to fill out applicable taxes. So for sure, everybody's going to get federal. So FIT, Medicare, you can start pre-filling, FICA, food. Okay, and then what is the state? So let's say this employee is in Arizona, so they're going to get Arizona state unemployment, and I don't know if I have Arkansas. No, I don't have it. Let's not do Arizona. Let's do Idaho. This employee's in Idaho, so we give them the Idaho taxes. Now, if this is an office person or someone's not working on a project and you want to calculate workers' comp for them, you might add workers' comp or GL here as well. Otherwise, let that pre-fill in on the job setup, and then you don't have to worry about it. So again, this is going to follow suit for the reciprocity. So if Josh is working on a job that was in Illinois, like we set up earlier in the prior video, it's going to give him Illinois over Idaho because there's a reciprocity set up in there. But maybe there's a project manager who always works out of the office, and you do charge some time to that Illinois job, but he's really not traveling there. There is this wild card under work location chargeable that you can use for this. You can come here and say percent, grab the percent. If you grab the percent here, that's telling the system never use the job never use the job work state, use the employee taxes always. Doesn't matter where he works. That's the percent. Okay. Most cases you won't have that filled out. And this can be imported as well. So we'll hit save, and now we have that done. Next is going to be your filing status and your state withholding. So federal status, you're going to need one. The effective date does determine the fields that pop up. So, depending on if you have employees that are still using the filing statuses before the new W-4 changes in 2020. Use this little info button here. If you basically put an effective date in 2019 or less, you're going to get the old field. So if I say this employee is going to use 2019, you see how the fields change here. And now I can do single, married, and I can put allowances in 2, 3, 4. Okay. You can also withhold extra. Maybe they want additional $50 taken out. If I make the date anything greater than 2020, like 25, now you'll get these new boxes for the W-4s. What's the dependent amount? Maybe it's $600, that type of thing. Still the extra withholding. Okay, so that's going to be determined by the date you use here. So again, as they submit new W-4s to you, you can duplicate them. Now see what I did here on accident as I put today's date, which for testing, I might not want because maybe I want to do July payroll. So if you do that, you can delete it or you can just duplicate. So you can say duplicate, go back a little bit, January 1, save. Now you have 2/1/1 and 8/29. You can elect to delete 8/29 to clean it up. But this also shows you if they change their filing status, maybe on 8/29 they got married and they want to change their filing status. You can do that. Okay. Next tab will be state withholding. So this is going to show you all the states or any local taxes that you might have, but typically the state income taxes that you have. And we know this employee is in Idaho, so we definitely want to click on Idaho, put in an effective date, and then you'll get the state-specific boxes, and most of the time they're the same, but single and 0, save. But if this is a field employee and you have projects potentially in Illinois and California, you also need to make sure this employee has those states set up. So we're going to set up Illinois as well, because if they ever work on a job from Illinois, it's going to try and give them Illinois state withholding. And if there's no filing status assigned here, you're going to get an error. So you can see in Illinois, they don't have a filing status. They just have exempt 1, exempt 2, or extra withholdings. But if you don't assign it, it's still going to error out. So we have to hit effective date, save. We need it up here. So if you have, hey, we work in 6 states, typically what people will do is for field employees, in the import file, they'll just pre-fill down all 6 states for every employee. Okay, but again, for office people, stuff like that, you don't need to fill out all the states, only the states that are over here. And that really is it as far as configuration goes for the employee. You're done at that tab. The last tab is your paid time off balances. Once we go live, you'll be able to see either your weekly accruals for hours, or if you're given it at the beginning of the year, you'll see the 40 here. You'll also see if they've taken any vacation pay and PTO pay, you'll see the in and out. And this is also a great area to make adjustments. You'll have the ability to come into here and say, oh, we messed up our beginning balances. We need to adjust this employee by 2 hours. You can just come right into here under add adjustments. And you can say for PTO, as August 1st, we need to give them 2 hours. Okay, or -2. So you can do that as well. Once you have this employees configured, all your employees configured and imported in, you are going to be ready for testing. And that's where you'll actually reach out and we'll have a milestone check-in and we'll get you a IMP instance or a testing instance that you can actually get into your workflow training for payroll and start testing. Thank you and good luck.